"I am yours tonight," said the giant virgin woman he discovered in his empty ranch. Witness this unbelievable, true-inspired story right here on Whisper of the Past. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share where you're watching from. Let's get started. Ethan Miller had always thought of himself as a man who had left the past behind. The dusty plains of Montana, the creaking wooden fences, the long stretches of wheat fields swaying under a merciless sun. Those were images he had packed away when he moved to the city. He had built a new life, far away from the burdens of family, land, and expectations. But life has a strange way of pulling a man back to the place he once tried to escape. His father's death forced him to return to the family ranch, a property long abandoned, swallowed by silence and the creeping arms of nature. The ranch had not been lived in for years. Windows were broken, barns stood hollow and empty, and the air inside the house smelled of old wood and forgotten days. As Ethan walked across the porch on that first evening, the boards groaned beneath his boots like old bones. He thought it would just be another empty place, nothing more than land he would eventually sell and leave behind once again. But he was wrong. The ranch was not empty. That night, under a sky painted with stars so bright they seemed to whisper secrets of the earth, Ethan wandered into the barn. His flashlight cut through the darkness, bouncing off dust particles that shimmered like tiny ghosts. The smell of hay lingered, though it had long since dried into brittle strands. He pushed open the crooked barn door, the rusted hinges protesting, and the sound echoed into the silence. At first, he thought the space was deserted, but then he felt it, a presence, the sensation of being watched. His breath grew uneven, and he scanned the corners, expecting a raccoon or maybe a drifter who had taken shelter inside. Instead, his eyes fell on something that stopped his heart cold. In the far corner, bathed in the dim sliver of moonlight coming through the roof, sat a figure. A woman. She was enormous, her body too large to be mistaken for anything ordinary. Even seated, she was taller than any man Ethan had ever known. Her hair spilled over her shoulders in golden waves, and her eyes, wide and unblinking, locked onto his with a mixture of fear and relief. For a moment, Ethan thought he was hallucinating. But as his flashlight steadied on her face, reality pressed down on him like a heavy hand. She was real, a giant woman hiding in his barn. Ethan's voice cracked as he spoke. Who are you?" The woman rose slowly, her towering form casting a long shadow across the barn walls. Her bare feet pressed softly against the straw-covered floor, and every movement carried both power and grace. When she finally spoke, her voice was gentle, trembling, almost innocent. "I am yours tonight." The words pierced the silence like an arrow. Ethan staggered back, his mind racing to make sense of what he was hearing. He had heard strange tales as a boy, whispered by old ranch hands, about spirits of the land, women of the earth who belonged to no world but their own. But those were just stories, told by firelight to entertain or scare children. Yet here she was, flesh and bone, her words echoing in the stillness of the barn. She stepped closer, lowering her gaze as though ashamed of her own existence. "I have been waiting," she said softly, her voice carrying a strange mixture of loneliness and devotion. "This place has kept me hidden for so long, but you have found me. And now I am yours." Ethan's chest tightened. Every instinct told him to run, to escape whatever strange encounter this was, yet his feet remained planted. Something in her voice, in her eyes, disarmed him completely. She was not threatening. She was vulnerable. There was a sadness in her expression that made her seem less like a monster and more like a forgotten soul who had been longing for someone to finally see her. He took a hesitant step forward. "Why here? Why my ranch?" The woman's lips quivered, as if she were piecing together words she had long kept buried. "Your father knew of me. He kept my secret. He promised I would not be disturbed. But he is gone now. And when you walked into this barn, I knew it was you I had been waiting for." Ethan's mind reeled. Could it be possible? Had his father known? The old man was a hardened rancher, never one for stories. But perhaps there had been truths he never shared. mysteries he carried to the grave. The woman moved again, this time lowering herself to her knees, her massive frame folding in a way that made her closer to his level. The barn creaked under her weight, but her movements were tender, careful, as though she feared breaking the fragile moment between them. "I have never known the world outside," she whispered. "I have never been touched, never been seen until now. I am yours tonight." The words sank deep into Ethan's soul. He couldn't explain the emotions coursing through him, fear, awe, confusion, and an unexplainable pull toward her. This was no ordinary woman. She was a secret bound to his family, to his land, and somehow to him. The night air grew colder, and the ranch around them seemed alive again. Crickets sang in the grass. The wind rustled through the broken shutters, and the stars above burned brighter, as if watching the moment unfold. Ethan knew that whatever had just begun in that barn was not a chance encounter. It was destiny, wrapped in mystery, handed down through silence and time. He reached out his hand, trembling, unsure if he was brave or foolish. She looked at it, then at him, and for the first time, a small smile broke across her face. A smile that carried centuries of waiting, longing, and hope. When her enormous hand reached out to meet his, the touch was warm, gentle, and achingly real. Ethan whispered under his breath, "This can't be real." But it was real. And it was only the beginning. The ranch that had once been an empty, forgotten shell was now alive with a presence that defied reason. Ethan realized that night he had uncovered not just a secret, but a story that would change his life forever. The following morning came with a soft haze over the Montana plains. Ethan awoke inside the farmhouse, though his sleep had been broken by restless thoughts of the woman in the barn. He had replayed every word she had spoken, every expression in her eyes, every strange mixture of innocence and longing that had poured from her lips. He tried to convince himself it had been a dream born out of exhaustion and loneliness. Yet as the sun crept over the horizon and painted the land in gold, he knew it had been real. The ranch was no longer abandoned. Someone, something was here, and it had chosen him. With cautious steps, Ethan walked back toward the barn. The morning air was cool, carrying the scent of dew-soaked earth and the distant cry of meadowlarks. He half expected the place to be empty again, the boards and shadows mocking his memory of the night before. But as he pushed open the barn doors, there she was. The giant woman sat quietly in the corner, her golden hair cascading over her shoulders, her eyes soft and watchful, as though she had been waiting for him all along. She smiled faintly when she saw him, and Ethan felt his breath catch. "You came back," she whispered. Her voice was low, carrying an almost melodic echo that lingered in the air. Ethan swallowed hard, unsure how to begin. "I had to. I needed to know if you were real, and you are." Her eyes dropped to the floor, her expression filled with a vulnerability that stirred something deep within him. "I told you last night. I've been here for longer than you can imagine. I was kept hidden, protected. Your father knew of me. He promised I would remain safe. But when you stepped inside this barn, I knew my waiting had ended. You are the one who found me. That means I am yours." The weight of her words pressed heavily on Ethan's chest. He tried to imagine his father, a man of iron discipline and few words, carrying such a secret his entire life. It seemed impossible, yet here she was, living proof that something extraordinary had been concealed within these lands. He walked closer, his boots crunching softly on the hay-strewn floor. "If my father knew about you, why didn't he ever tell me?" The woman's lips curved sadly. "Because he feared the world. He feared what would happen if others discovered me. He knew I was different. I do not belong to the world you know. I've never walked among your people. I have never seen beyond these fields." Her words carried a deep loneliness, the kind that only years of solitude could carve into a soul. Ethan felt his defenses soften. She was not dangerous. She was not here to harm him. She was simply a being who had been waiting for someone to find her, to claim her, to free her from the silence that had bound her for so long. Ethan lowered himself onto an old wooden crate, sitting across from her. "And what happens now?" he asked quietly. She met his gaze, her eyes shining with a mix of hope and fear. "Now I am yours. That is the way it has always been. The one who finds me, the one who sees me for who I am, becomes my keeper, my companion. You discovered me, Ethan. That means I belong to you." The words should have unsettled him, yet they did not. Instead, they sparked a sense of responsibility, a strange pull that bound him to her. She was not a figment of imagination, not a story whispered by the fire. She was real, and she had chosen him. The days that followed were unlike anything Ethan could have imagined. He returned to the barn each morning, bringing her food, water, and the simple company she had been denied for so long. Though she was a giantess, her appetite was modest, her needs simple. She spoke little of herself, but when she did, her words were filled with wonder and innocence, as though every detail of his world was a revelation to her. One afternoon, as they sat together watching the sun sink over the horizon, Ethan asked the question that had burned inside him since the night he found her. "Why me? Why now?" She turned to him, her golden hair catching the last rays of sunlight. "Because you are different. I saw it in your eyes. You did not look at me with fear. You did not turn away. You reached out your hand." Ethan thought back to that moment, the trembling in his fingers as he had extended his hand toward hers. It had been instinct, nothing more, yet it had bound him to her in ways he was only beginning to understand. As nights turned into mornings, and mornings into long days of silence broken only by conversation, Ethan began to feel the ranch changing. The air no longer carried the emptiness of abandonment. The field seemed greener, the wind softer, the very land alive with a renewed spirit. It was as though her presence breathed life back into the place that had been left to rot. But with that life came questions. Ethan could not ignore the reality of the world beyond the ranch. What if someone discovered her? What if word spread? The thought of strangers, scientists or opportunists trying to claim her sent a chill down his spine. She was vulnerable, despite her size and strength. She trusted him, and now he bore the weight of protecting her. One night, as the moon hung low and silver over the plains, Ethan voiced his fears. "What if someone comes? What if they find you?" She looked at him with calm certainty. "Then you will protect me. That is why I belong to you." Her faith in him was absolute, and it both humbled and frightened him. He was just a man, a rancher's son, not a hero or guardian. Yet in her eyes, he was everything. The bond between them deepened with each passing day. Ethan found himself confiding in her, sharing stories of his childhood, his struggles, his dreams. She listened with an intensity that made him feel truly seen for the first time in his life. And in return, she shared fragments of her own existence, memories of silence, of waiting, of a promise that one day someone would come. "I have never been touched," she confessed one evening, her voice trembling. "Never known love, never known the warmth of another. I am yours tonight, Ethan. I have been waiting for you." The vulnerability in her words shook him. He realized then that she was not just a secret to keep or a mystery to unravel. She was a soul longing for connection, for belonging, for something more than the shadows of the barn. Ethan reached out, just as he had on that first night, and when their hands met, he felt the weight of centuries in her touch. She was more than flesh and bone. She was a story, a legend, a living testament to something beyond the understanding of men. And now she was his. The world outside the ranch continued as it always had, unaware of the miracle hidden within its borders. But for Ethan, nothing would ever be the same. He had found her, and in doing so he had found himself. The ranch was no longer a place of emptiness and decay. It was alive with purpose, with meaning, with a bond that defied reason. As the days stretched into weeks, and weeks into something that felt timeless, Ethan knew one thing with absolute certainty. The night he walked into that barn had been the night his life changed forever. And as he looked into her eyes, filled with devotion and unspoken promises, he realized he would never walk away. She had said the words that first night, words that had seemed strange, almost impossible. But now they rang true, etched into the very core of his being. I am yours tonight, and she always would be.